Service series. Would you please state your name and where you live?
Harry L. Michie, 8 Eagle Street, Hoosick Falls, New York.
How long have you lived in Hoosick Falls, Harry?
All my life.
All your life. How long is that life? How old are you?
75 years.
75, great. Would you please tell us about your life in Hoosick Falls before you entered the service?
Before I went to service, I was a student, working part-times to make a living in order to provide ourselves with clothes and help the family.
When did you enter the service, Harry?
1943.
1943. What branch did you go into?
The Army.
Into the Army. Were you enlisted or were you drafted?
I was drafted from high school.
I see. And when you got drafted, where did they send you from Hoosick Falls when you drafted? To Albany and then...
So we first went to Albany and were introduced into the Army, and then we moved on to Camp Upton, Long Island for replacement duties.
All right. Did others from Hoosick Falls enter when you were drafted together with you? Who?
Yes, George Scott, Jerry DeLuca, and I think Jack Hayden.
The four of you got drafted and went down together.
Right.
I see. What branch of service were you in? The Army?
The Army.
But what section of the Army?
Field Artillery.
Field Artillery, okay. Would you give us a timeline, Tez, where you went, where did you serve, and what are the interesting things that happened? Just talk about your service and what happened.
My service started down in Camp Landing, Florida, with my basic training. From there, we went to Fort Ord, California, then to Camp Stoneman, which was a replacement depot for overseas duties. We went over to the Pacific area, landing on Goodenough Island on Easter Sunday of 1944, and that was the replacement depot for the area. And from there, I ended up going to Hollandia, New Guinea. In Hollandia, I ended up in Leyte, which was a battle zone at that time. And from there, we had a number of trips. The organization that I belonged to,
what was that?
Assigned to,
Do you
was
remember?
the 148th Field Artillery Battalion, which was the National Guard out of the state of Idaho, but that made up part of the Regimental Combat Team, 112th Regimental Combat Team. The other part coming from the 112th Cavalry, unmounted, from the state of Texas. These were both National Guard outfits that had been on their way to the Philippines when war broke out. Now our duties were to go where anybody needed help. We were on the move most of the time.
When they were attacking islands, taking island by island in those days, you people were sent in to do the artillery part.
We were sent in to do the artillery part or back them up if they needed it.
Yeah. All right. So you went up to, you said an island that you went to. How many other islands were you on?
Well, I was on New Guinea, I was on Leyte, I was on the island of Mindoro, and I was on the island of Luzon, and then up to Japan.
I see. Now, how many battles? I mean, were you a part of battles, actual combat battles, all through this, or?
Every move we made was to a combat area.
I see.
We had 7 boat rides, as we call them, to the different areas in the 2 years I was overseas.
In other words, you people landed with the landing craft, and then that you see in the movies, and they went onto the island and brought out the artillery, and
right. Yeah, right.
So you were in 7 combat areas now.
Right. 2 of them were beachheads.
I see. All right. Then you went to 2 of them were beachheads.
Right. The island of Mindoro.
Yeah. What do you mean by a beachhead?
This is where you go in to take over the island, and that is quite a show for a young person like myself going in. When first of all, when you get into these convoys going to make the beachheads, and all you see is boats coming up over one horizon, you look the other way and boats are going down on the other side. But then, before the beachhead really starts, the bombardment of these islands, and it makes you wonder how anybody can stand and live on them after they get done.
I see, and then you landed...
Then the crafts go in, the small crafts go in with the troops. Right.
I see, and
Just
then
like you see in the movies.
Yeah, and then you would follow with the artillery
We
to
would
help out.
We would be unloaded and follow up, right.
Okay, and you went through 2 beachheads, you said,
Right,
and other out. Then you said you went to Japan.
right.
Well, what happened? What kind of duty was that in Japan?
Well, that was a kind of a mop-up duty. We went in the first wave, and that was in August of 1945.
That was right after the atomic
Right
bomb.
after, no.
No?
This was right after the D-Day.
Oh, after D-Day.
Yeah, right. And then, of course, they signed their surrender on September 2nd, I believe it was.
And you went in August.
We went in August.
So you were
right.
one of the first groups in.
We were the first ones in to secure Japan.
I see.
We landed at Tediyama Harbor, and from there we did different duties up and down the island.
Well, how long did you stay in Japan?
Till Christmas morning, 1945.
I see, and then what happened?
We were shipped home.
You were rotated home.
Right.
I see, and then you got back into the United States, and what happened?
Well, we were
Wait, did you come back by plane or by boat?
by boat.
Yeah, so you had a good boat ride.
No, very bad boat ride.
Yeah, did you get sick on the boat?
No, I was sick with malaria before we left Japan.
I see.
And I had about a week that I was really in bad shape, but my fellow comrades took care of me until we got back to the States.
I see. And then where did you land in the United States?
See, that was Fort Lewis, state of Washington. Then from there, we were only there a few days, and they shipped us back over to Camp Dix, New Jersey, where we were discharged. Discharged on January 19th, 1946.
How long was that? Then you were in the service for 3 years. Is that it?
Pretty close.
Pretty long.
Oh,
But you didn't horse around. They sent you right overseas right after your basic
After
training.
basic training, we were on our way.
Was there anybody from Hoosick Falls with you in this artillery?
No, nobody from Hoosick Falls in the artillery.
Yeah.
But Jerry DeLuca went to basic training with me down in Fort
see.
Landing, and we went overseas together. But after we hit Goodenough Island, Jerry went to an anti-tank gun outfit, and I went to the field.
Hey, we'll have to get Jerry to come in and talk about it.
Right.
All right. After you got home, then you were discharged, and you came back to Hoosick Falls.
Right.
I see. And what did you do in Hoosick Falls when you got back?
When I come back, I went back to my old job, working in the meat market, the Oneida Meat Market, which was on Church Street, working for Fremont Haswell.
I see.
I lasted there only, probably 4 months, and when they wanted me to work Saturdays, Friday nights and Saturday nights, and being as young as I was ready to move, so I left that job and went to work down in Noblin Woods Machine Company as an apprentice draftsman. And I only lasted 2.5 years down there when the walls began to close in on me. So then I left and went to, got into the construction business.
I see. And when did you go to the school? I know you were superintendent of the building grounds at the Central School. When did you come there?
I went there in 1958. I had a family started, and when the business and the construction business, when you're not working Saturdays in the summertime, you can expect to get laid off in the wintertime. So at that time I started looking for another job, and I took the job as custodian up at the old Walter A. Wood High School.
I see. And then you got promoted right up to
Then
superintendent.
from there,
Yeah.
I went over with the Central School, and then went to school to take up my title of superintendent of building grounds.
That's great, Harry. And You still at the house that you were, was that house bought when you got married, or was that in the family, that house you live at now?
The house I'm at now, we moved into 1938. The family moved up there.
I see.
And I took it over in 1952, after my father was left alone.
Okay, is there anything else about the service, things you remember or something you'd like to talk about the service, that you can tell us, interesting things, little anecdotes, anything about the service?
Well, there was many gruesome details that we don't talk about.
Yeah, right.
They hit a hard subject there.
Yeah, right.
There was a few interesting items. One that really comes to my mind was when we were in Japan. We got into a demolition detail where we blew up guns that come off of the Philippines that were made down in the Waterville Leyte Arsenal. That was one of our duties, was to blow them up. And on one of the details...
They were American guns?
American guns that were captured.
Oh, I see.
And Battalion. And,
when they took over the Philippines, they got our guns. I see.
So we had the duties of blowing them up, destroying them, in other words. But on one of our details, we had to put a demolition trailer on a flat car, a railroad, at Tadayama, and go to the peninsula of Chiba, that's the other side of Tokyo. And in doing so, we went through about 14 tunnels. Some of them were as much as 2 minutes long, others were longer. And when we got up there, we looked like colored people with the soot and the soft coal burners. But the main thing that I was going to refer to was, before we loaded, after we loaded on the train, we walked down through, and of course the custom in Japan is for the women to hang on to any place they can on the train, and the men sit in the seats. Well, that didn't set good with us. So we went down through, put all the men off the train, and brought all the women in and put them in the seats. Well, that was kind of a big mistake, because we had a lot of people trying to get at us after that, going against their customs.
Yeah, right.
That was one that always...
You always remembered that?
Always remember that. That was
I see.
A long trip.
Well, is there anything else, Harry? I mean, one thing, when you were in the service, how old were you during those 3 years in the service?
I was 18 years of age when I got drafted.
I see.
As a senior in high school. And they allowed us to complete our education due to the fact that we were seniors in school, plus we belonged to the New York State Guard. That was a replacement of the 105th that had been mobilized. And we belonged to that our senior year. So with that in mind, they allowed us to graduate. Now, when we graduated on a Monday night, Tuesday morning, at 4 o'clock, we were on a train headed for Peekskill, New York, for 2 weeks of training with the State Guard.
I see. So in other words, you were between 18 and 21,
right,
all your service time.
Right.
So you went through all those battles and everything as a real young boy.
Yeah. Young and foolish, as we said.
Yeah.
Things that we should have been more respectable to. We didn't take it in consideration. We didn't think for our safety. Everything was right out front. And a couple of times we got recommended by the officers for being out front when we shouldn't have been.
I see. Well, Harry, I thank you very much for coming in. I appreciate it. And we've learned a lot